The Seattle Kraken call up some players from Coachella Valley, but what does this mean for the short term and long term for your favorite hockey team?
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Erica Ayala here, and I will be talking with Zaiem. This is actually a two-part episode, but we recorded in the middle of a lot of things happening, including the emergency call-ups. At the time that Zaiem and I were talking, we did not have the clip from Dan Bylsma that I'm about to play you shortly. So I just wanted to come in, do a quick refresher, reset, as Dan Bylsma might say, so that we have the most up-to-date information. I think the conversation, though, that we're about to have about goaltending still stands. I also want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you by Game Time. So download that Game Time app, create an account, and use promo Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase.
So mindset of the team coming back, how'd you feel about where everybody's at today?
Yeah, good. I just obviously Andre Burakovsky was not here, sickness and day-to-day, and Joey banged up a little bit in the game against Colorado and stayed back for this one game trip. So, but good. I think we talked before the break, 4 days to have a reset, get your mind fresh, and come back raring and ready to go for essentially the second half of the season.
So just to clarify, both guys are Game Time for tomorrow, or?
They're not here, and it's a 1 o'clock game, so they're day-to-day. Let's go with.
So again, that was Dan Bylsma. He spoke on Friday about Andre Burakovsky. I think he keeps saying Burakovsky, which I find a little funny, but Andre Burakovsky and Joey Daccord, he said a little reluctantly that let's just say they're day to day. But again, Zaiem and I didn't have this clip while we were recording what you were about to hear. Again, two-part episode, because we really dive into if it's going to be Philipp Grubauer that gets the start, which seems very likely, again, confirming Joey Daccord is not on the trip, seems like it might be short term for Joey Daccord and likely Andre Burakovsky as well. But, what happens if Joey Dax does go down? And then a conversation that we're going to have, especially seeing how the Seattle Kraken finish out the year, is this maybe a good time to give Joey Daccord some rest? He's a long-term goaltender for us where, as you will hear us talk about, there's question as to whether Philipp Grubauer is, but he's not the only one. So coming up in the next few episodes of Locked On Kraken, we once again have to talk about trade rumors. You'll hear Zaiem and I talk about Yanni Gourde. Apparently he's open to waiving changing some of his no trade clause. And Brandon Tanev, also someone who, if the Kraken are not going to be a playoff team, which it's really looking like they're not going to be, is likely on the trade block. These shouldn't be surprises. We talk about them on Locked On Kraken a lot. But again, as we just march closer and closer to this season, looking like it will end without a playoff push, we have to have these conversations. So, all right. I just wanted to get some housekeeping out of the way. Also, apologies because I've noticed that a few episodes, my whole setup here hasn't been getting the audio from my very nice Rode microphone here, but that's on me. I'll be more mindful of my settings moving forward. Enjoy this episode and enjoy game day for the Seattle Kraken.
But I am joined once again by Zaiem Beg of Davy Jones Locker Room. Zaiem, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Erica. It's I had a wonderful Christmas. The Kraken did not hurt me for several days, so that was a really nice reprieve.
There you go.
But you know what? I'm ready to get hurt again. I'm hankering for some Kraken hockey. If it's good Kraken hockey or bad Kraken hockey, it's still better than no hockey. And I'm ready to get right back to it.
Are we a glutton for punishment? Who knows? The Kraken will be coming home before the year is up. We'll talk about that as Locked on Kraken continues on throughout 2024, marching on to a whole new year. But will it be a whole new Kraken team? Well, we do have some changes that were announced just shortly before you and I sat down to record, Zaiem.
Yeah, so the headliner is that Aleš Stezka, goalie, was called up from Coachella Valley. And we, of course, don't know the exact reason why until they play a game. Only reason why they would really call up Aleš Stezka at this point is not because they're trying to figure out what they have in a new goalie or anything like that. It's likely because of an injury. Joey Daccord was the last goalie to play, and there was an instance with like 3:50 or 3:45 left in the first period against the last game they played against Colorado, where it wasn't a contact injury at all. Joey just kind of fell down awkwardly, slow to get up, and then play stopped, and like a couple players like went over and checked on him. Then he got up and he skated around, and he finished the game, but that is the only thing I have seen that could point to a potential goal injury, which did look like a potential goal injury. So it is likely that Joey Daccord is injured. And
yeah, I mean, Stezka coming up does point to, as you said, a goaltender injury, someone unavailable. So we're just going to have a conversation based on the two goaltenders that we have had at the NHL level. And of course, I think we have to start with Joey Daccord, not because if there is an injury, he seems the most likely to be injured, but also because he's done the lion's share of the work for this Seattle Kraken team so far. And we've talked about what we get from Joey Daccord in net versus Philipp Grubauer in net. But let's start with Joey. If this is an injury or an absence of some kind, what do you think this means to have Joey Daccord out of the lineup? I mean, let's start with, what do you see as the value added when he's on the ice? And then, of course, what does that mean that the Kraken would be missing if he's injured?
Well, Joey is clearly the team's best goalie. And that was not true at this point last year. It wasn't until the Winter Classic, which was less than a year ago, how quickly the vibes can change in a year. And, that was his coming out party. That was when he was deemed the mayor. And it was, but if you go back 365 days, it was Grubauer was the starter and Joey Daccord was kind of the backup. Now, clearly, Daccord has taken the reins because he's clearly the superior goaltender. He is one of the better goalies in the NHL, period. And that's a big drop-off. Even if Philipp Grubauer, some people think he's awful, some people think he's average. I think he's closer to average than awful. But wherever he sits on that spectrum, he's certainly not up there with Joey Daccord. And so there's going to be a drop-off from play in goal, and that's not something that's surprising to Kraken fans. It's not something that's new to Kraken fans. Philipp Grubauer at this point is kind of who he is, and we know who that person is. And it's not great, but he can get the job done, assuming he ever gets goal support.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Philipp Grubauer in the next segment, but I want to stick with Joey Daccord here because, you mentioned that Colorado game. It was late in that first frame. Now, that was a 5-2 loss for the Seattle Kraken. But if you look at when the Avalanche scored, it was a 1-1 game going into the second or into the first period or first intermission, excuse me. So the Avalanche scored 4 of their goals after that.
And 2 of them were empty net goals. So it was really like a 3-2 loss. Yeah,
exactly. So just putting that context in there, and again, that game was a little interesting for a few different reasons. Talked about that a little bit on the show already, but with Joey, I think this is a goaltender that, again, and it just seems like his energy, and I think it actually started happening even before the Winter Classic, but his energy seems to be the right kind of energy for this team. I love that he is not afraid to move the puck. Now, there have been times in his history in Coachella Valley and even in the NHL where that's been, it's, you know, it's been a little scary sometimes to see him play the puck, but I think that's the evolution of the game, to be honest. And the way Joey Daccord can get the offense in transition is huge for a Seattle Kraken team that says they want to play fast, but doesn't always have. And I mean, this is something we actually spent a lot of time offline, or you spent a lot of time offline talking about, which I absolutely love. And I want to get into it eventually, do a deep dive, but this is not always a defensively sound team. And why that matters, and I'm not talking about the blue liners, I'm talking about the team as a whole, but you have to be able to find seams, slip through seams, and be able to attack. The Kraken get bit by other teams that are able to do that to them, while also not always effectively moving the puck to break themselves free. But Joey Daccord, he effectively is like I'm a baseball gal. He's like having a center fielder with a wicked arm, right? You don't need the cutoff. That ball's going straight to home, and that runner is out. That's what Joey can offer, and I think that's huge. We talked about this also before, you and I, on the podcast, in tight spaces. This is a Seattle Kraken team that, unfortunately, I think still offers too much traffic in front of the net. And if that's going to happen, Joey Daccord, and you wrote these numbers down for us on Locked on Kraken before, he's better in those tight spaces when things are really close, in that blue paint. I think he just handles that pressure a little bit better. So those are some of the things that I see that Joey Daccord brings to the table. And again, we're going to do a deeper dive into Philipp Grubauer. But another thing that we heard right as we were coming into this short holiday break, Zaiem, is that Dan Bylsma was expecting, now that he has two healthy goaltenders, that there would be more of an equitable split in net. Now, if one of the goaltenders is hurt, whether honestly, it doesn't matter, right? If it's Joey or Philipp, if Stezka's coming in, we're expecting that he's going to dress. I don't think that's what Dan Bylsma had in mind, was to give an equitable split in net to Stezka and someone else, as opposed to Philipp Grubauer and Joey Daccord. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, because it's the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, of course, hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports or leagues like the WNBA, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. That's a lot of multipliers there. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas, and offering 2 free picks in December. So you've still got time. And when your pick hits, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. And so we want you to download that Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Yeah, it's also interesting that Stezka was the goalie called up and not Nicholas Coco, who I think is kind of the really the future of the Kraken goaltending prospect. He's just been really, really good, and he's up and coming. And this is, I think, he will be the Riker Evans of goaltenders, where we kind of heard it for a couple of years. It's like, oh, this kid's coming up, and then finally he's here, and it's like, oh man, this kid's he's playable, and then now he's good. Coco's kind of on that same path, but he is notably not being called up here. So it does seem like this is going to be a lion's share situation for Philipp Grubauer, assuming that Daccord misses significant time.
Right.
Maybe it's just one game. Maybe it's just a little tweak, and he just needs an extra day of rest. And so this is just a one-time emergency call-up. Again, we obviously don't know, and we won't even know even when the game starts, because they're not going to tell us the severity of any injury. They're just going to say this player is injured, and you can speculate as much as you want to the severity of it, because you will get no joy or information. So, and I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. So I'm going to be optimistic here. I think Philipp Grubauer does do better when he is getting consistent work.
Yeah.
And when he is coming in spot starts, he's just not as good when he's not in a rhythm.
Agreed. Yeah.
And so, that we can talk about him in the next segment, but there are some things that Grubauer has been doing a little differently this year that have improved his game a little bit. And so maybe I might have to walk back when I said we know who Philipp Grubauer is, where maybe we know who 90% of who Philipp Grubauer is, but there's a little bit of extra juice this season that I've noticed. And so there's a little bit of more hope for optimism, I think, than maybe it may initially seem when you think, okay, Joey Daccord is injured and he may miss significant time.
Well, I certainly want to hear about this juice, because I feel like I've been talking about juice be gone for way too long on Locked On Kraken. The juice is gone. It's sold out. It's spoiled. I don't know, whatever you want to say, but the Kraken needs some juice. So if Groovy's got it, I want to hear about it. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here alongside Zaiem Beg, and we are counting down the days till 2025, but sounds like you think I don't know if you want to call it a comeback, but it sounds like maybe Groovy's got the juice and we might see it. I agree with you 100%. In fact, I don't remember if I talked about this on the show or not, but exactly what you said, spurts with Gruby versus repetition in net, several starts in a row. The one and only Everett Fitzhugh and I were talking about that in New Jersey when I got to catch up with the team on the road. So I think you're right. I am curious to see if we'll ever get to see, though, Philipp Grubauer get significant starts in a row. But it sounds like, Zaiem, this is a potential. This is his time. This could be his moment. So tell me about this juice and what you've noticed from Philipp Grubauer.
Okay. So there have been, I think, two major weaknesses with Philipp Grubauer's game since he came to Seattle. Well, three, really. So the first is that just sometimes he just doesn't see the puck very well. And so he lets in some goals that you're going to want that one back. And that's just going to happen. I don't know how you fix that. His rebound control is not elite. It's probably a little bit below average. But the thing that was really frustrating was, look, the defense in front of you, even when it's good, is not going to always be good. There are going to be on-man rushes. There are going to be breakaways. There are going to be 2-on-1s. There are going to be times when a goalie needs to make a save. And in the past, there have been so many games, especially in year one, where it's like, oh, can you just stop a breakaway to save your life? And the reason, I think, is because he has been so passive on those breakaways. When you see Joey Daccord facing a breakaway, he goes out and he challenges the shooter. He cuts out that angle and he says, I dare you. Okay, you what? You're coming in? I'm coming at you. And Grubauer is just not that way. Well, except this year. He is now coming out, and it's not just in on-man situations, but he is challenging the shooters more. He is coming out to meet them, and I assume that is an influence of playing with Joey Daccord, whose father is a goalie coach. Joey's so technically sound, and I think that is something that it's not something I just saw for like one or two games, but this is a consistent thing. Look, there are still other issues with Philipp Grubauer. I think that the 8-goal game against San Jose, where he couldn't get pulled because it was on the first day of a back-to-back, really hurts his numbers. His season-long numbers aren't great, but they're not as awful as they were if you take that one game out.
Yeah.
And normally he would have been pulled after like 3 goals, but because it was a back-to-back, they had to leave him in, so he led up the full 8. Yeah. And so it was just worse than it seemed. But there is some improvement technically with his play, and it is addressing, I think, the biggest problem that Philipp Grubauer has had, which is that he has just been too passive in net. And so that's the thing that I see that is like, that's different, and that's better, and that's encouraging. Now, if he gets consistent time, maybe we're cooking something here.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that, because, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering the opponent correctly. I don't remember if it was the Chicago. Did Gruby start against Chicago, or whenever his last start was? I don't remember, but it was somewhere between Chicago and Colorado. So there you go.
It was Golden. It was Vegas, right?
Oh, that's right. We did.
Yeah, because it was back to back.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right. Thank you. Yes, that is correct. That makes more, because did we play Boston? I don't. Anyway, the point is, I think it was in that Vegas game. I think you're right. And he did just that, which I remember, seeing him kind of go for, a stick, a poke check, like, be a little bit more aggressive. It stood out for the obvious reason being that Vegas scored there. But then when I looked at it, I was like, wow, I wouldn't have expected Philipp Grubauer to make that play. Joey Daccord, sure. Other goalies, sure. And so although that resulted in a goal, if you really break down that specific goal, I'm not against what Philipp Grubauer actually did on that play, but it goes back to something that you mentioned kind of in passing, something that I talk about all of the time. But the positioning for the Kraken and them being able to recover on a reset from the opposition had as much to do with that goal going in as Philipp Grubauer trying to be aggressive. If anything, I think he read that, oh, crap, if I don't get to this, no one's getting to it. So I think that's so interesting. And it's definitely something, if we do see more time from Philipp Grubauer, that I am going to keep in mind. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken also brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely has happened to me a few times. I have been using Rocket Money, especially being, I definitely use Rocket Money, especially being an entrepreneur, being someone who works on contracts. My money is coming from all kinds of places. It's definitely going out to a lot of places. And it can be hard sometimes to be able to itemize things that are business expenses, but also for what business, for what venture. And places like Rocket Money have really helped me stay organized. And Rocket Money is made easy so that you can track everything from subscriptions to your income down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. And it's an app that can help you cancel unwanted subscriptions. You can monitor your spending, which is what I like to do. And it can also help lower your bills so you can grow your savings or just spend more money on baseball and hockey hats like I do. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even your goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, I am one of them, and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions and saves members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So if you want to cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster, you can do it with Rocket Money. So go to rocketmoney.com/locked on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. Once again, because third time's a charm, rocketmoney.com/locked on. Happy saving. You mentioned a lot about Philipp Grubauer, and I don't know that he is going to be able to shake off or exercise some of the demons that exist for Kraken fans. There are Kraken fans that have not wanted to and will not give him the benefit of the doubt since season 1. That's just where they're at. I've been a little bit slower to and more reluctant to be critical of him because I do not like the defensive identity, not the defense men and true blue liners, but the defensive identity of the team I have not been thrilled with since inception. Like I'm not here for it. I talk about it all the time. So what do we need to see? Let's push all of that away, assuming that there is more ice time, more starts for Philipp Grubauer. in addition to what you said, which I really like, him just being a little bit more aggressive, not being as passive. What do we need to see from Philipp Grubauer? Are there things that he can do to get closer to the performances that we saw that helped the Seattle Kraken not just play in their first playoffs, but win their first playoff series a couple of seasons ago?
I think that Grubauer can only do so much, and it is, to your point, the defensive structure in front of him. He is being more aggressive, as we just discussed, and I think that is about the extent to which he can control the other stuff. His positioning it's fine. It's just really letting in goals that he probably shouldn't, and he lets in like one a game. I don't know how you fix that. That's just kind of that's who he is.
Yeah.
But he is pretty sensitive to the defense in front of him. He was a Vezina finalist in Colorado the year before he signed with Seattle, and then he looked awful. And the defense in front of him in Colorado was very good. The defense in front of him in Seattle was very bad. And so his numbers went from, wow, this guy might be elite, to, wow, this guy might be the worst goaltender in the league in the span of like 2 months.
Brutal.
So
yeah.
Is that Grubauer, or is that the team in front of him? It's probably the team in front of him to a large extent. And I think goalies generally get too much credit and too much blame when the team in front of them matters so much. And if you just break down the goals, so one thing that we do on the social media platforms is the NHL has these dots, and they show you where all the dots were on the ice when a goal was scored. And so we put that on social media, and you can see how many goals result in a player just being out of position, or a guy, and it goes for both teams, right? It's just that's just how goals are scored in the NHL. It's not usually, this isn't 1995 where it's Al McInnes launching a slap shot and just beating some poor goaltender who moonlights as a milkman on his off days. Right. Yeah. Everyone is now, all the goalies are good. They're much better. They all play sound technique. You're going to have to do something other than being a goalie cleanly to score goals, to generate goals in the NHL. And so, yeah, you are beating Grubauer cleanly sometimes, but most of the time it is the stuff that's happening in front of him.
Yeah. I've been saying that for years. I've been saying it for years, so I feel kind of vindicated here. But here's the thing. We do need Philipp Grubauer to get, if indeed he is going to be getting more starts. I think, agree, as does Everett for the record, that he's best, when he has some continuity, consistency. He's probably starting the next game, right? I think, whether it's in the long-term injury, just, not with the team kind of situation. I feel like this move today means we're going to see Philipp Grubauer in net. So for me, we need to, and I think the break, I'm hoping that the break will help with this he's got to be ready to go. Now, that's a lot to ask for a team that's not always ready to go. But Philipp Grubauer has to be ready to go. And so I just, we have to see that from him. Because if he's not ready to go, historically speaking, from this season, but then also just kind of how the Kraken, what their MO tends to be generally, if our goaltender's not ready to go, we're not ready to go. It's not a team that is going to put up a 5-spot consistently. They might get 5 goals scored on them, but we have seen this be an anemic offense. It goes up and down, it ebbs and flows, and so the goaltender has to be ready to go. And as much as we do need Philipp Grubauer or whoever our goalie is, but it's seeming like it's going to be Philipp Grubauer for this next game, Zaiem. You've already mentioned it multiple times. The problems with this team that they want to be able to fix, and it might already be too late for this season, but they have to fix moving forward, are not coming from goaltending even first. Certainly not first, but absolutely not alone. There are issues with this team. So as much as we do need Philipp Grubauer to be ready to go, he's not the only one, Zaiem. And I think we have to talk about this. Getting close to a new year. But, is this a team that can be, is this season salvageable? Or is it really time, as we march closer to the trade deadline, for a rebuild? I mean, I think we got to talk about it. I think it's beyond time, right, to have this conversation. And so that's what we're going to do next on Lock. But the good news is that Kraken hockey is back as of Saturday. They will be taking on the Vancouver Canucks. And then on the 30th, the team from Utah that did the PWHL thing and just is the Utah hockey team. They don't have a proper mascot or name. So there's no one that's going to, piss Paul Bissonnette off just for existing. But, we get to see them, which does mean, that I don't know if Nick Olczyk is going to be traveling with the team, but one of our formers, Nick Olczyk, of course, on the broadcast team for the Ohio, that's not correct, for the Utah hockey team. If he does make his way back, I'm sure that will be fun for all. But whether you are, whether you celebrated Christmas, whether you're celebrating Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or anything in between, eating your 12 grapes on New Year's Eve, we truly want to wish you a happy holiday season. The Seattle Kraken will return to Climate Pledge Arena on the 30th for the Maestro Bobblehead Day. I'm so excited for all of you who get a Maestro bobblehead. And, the Kraken play pretty well on bobblehead days, statistically, historically speaking. So maybe that's when everything will be in concert for our team. But for Zaiem Beg from Davy Jones Locker Room, Erica L. Ayala here. Thank you so much for listening to Locked On Kraken. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to one another, and as always, hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.